The mountain that learned to love. The wind howled like a wounded animal, tearing through the pine trees and scraping ice against the cabin walls. Snow fell sideways, thick and merciless, burying the narrow mountain trail that no wagon had used in years. Inside the cabin, a fire struggled to stay alive, its orange glow flickering across rough-hewn logs and the broad shadow of a man who looked more like a legend than flesh and bone. He was called many things in the territories. Giant. Brute. Savage. Mountain Devil. Few knew his real name anymore, and fewer still dared to speak it to his face. He stood taller than most men, shoulders wide as a barn door, his beard thick and dark, dusted with snow and ash. His hands were scarred, knuckles swollen from years of splitting wood, breaking ice, and defending what little he had from wolves, men, and hunger. He had chosen this mountain to disappear. Years ago, he had walked away from towns, from people, from the noise of the world that only brought him pain. The mountain asked for nothing except strength, and strength he had in abundance. Solitude had been his shield. Silence his only companion. Until tonight. The door slammed open under a desperate shove, snow exploding into the cabin like a living thing. The giant spun around, instinctively reaching for the rifle mounted above the hearth. But what stood in the doorway was not an outlaw or a hunter. It was a woman. She stumbled inside, nearly collapsing, her boots torn, her coat thin and soaked through. Her hair, once carefully braided, hung loose and stiff with ice. Behind her, half buried in the snow, was a small wagon and two trembling children clinging to each other, their faces pale with fear and cold. The woman fell to her knees. "Please," she sobbed, her voice breaking apart as badly as her strength. "Please don't leave us here." The giant froze. No one had ever begged him for anything before. He stared at her as if she were an apparition, something conjured by the storm itself. Women did not come to his mountain. Families did not wander into his exile. This place was meant to kill the unprepared, and he had learned long ago not to interfere with fate. But then one of the children cried out, a thin, broken sound that cut through the roar of the wind. The giant lowered his rifle. He moved slowly, carefully, like a bear afraid of frightening a wounded deer. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, unused to kindness, unused to being heard. "I won't leave my family." The word surprised even him. The woman looked up, eyes wide, disbelief fighting with exhaustion. "Family?" she whispered. He did not explain. Instead, he stepped past her into the storm. The cold hit him like a hammer, but he barely felt it as he lifted the wagon by its broken axle and dragged it toward the cabin as if it weighed nothing. He scooped the children into his arms, one under each massive limb, and carried them inside. Their small bodies trembled violently, fingers clutching his coat as if he were the only solid thing left in the world. Inside, he shut the door and barred it. The cabin grew quieter, warmer, the fire crackling louder in contrast to the storm's fury. The woman watched him with a mixture of fear and awe. She had heard stories of the mountain man. Everyone had. Mothers used him to frighten children into obedience. Preachers whispered his name like a warning. They said he killed men with his bare hands. They said he ate wolves. They said he had no heart. Yet here he was, kneeling to warm her children's frozen feet by the fire, his massive hand surprisingly gentle as he wrapped them in blankets. Her knees finally gave out, and she collapsed against the wall, tears streaming freely now that survival was no longer just a desperate hope. She did not know his name. He did not know hers. But the mountain had brought them together all the same. As the children slowly stopped shivering, the giant stood and turned to the woman. Up close, he was terrifying. His face was lined and scarred, one eyebrow split from an old fight. His eyes, however, were not cruel. They were tired. Deeply, painfully tired. "Who are you?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "My name is Eliza." She hesitated before continuing, as if saying the rest might shatter what little safety she had found. We were traveling west. My husband, he died 2 weeks ago. Fever. We were heading to his brother's land. The storm came faster than we expected. The horses bolted. The wagon broke. I thought. Her voice cracked again. She looked at her children, then back at the giant. I thought we were going to die. He nodded once, as if death were an old acquaintance. You would have, he said honestly. Instead of recoiling, she let out a shaky breath of relief. Honesty, she realized, was safer than false comfort. He handed her a tin cup filled with steaming broth. She accepted it with trembling hands, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through them both. He pulled back quickly, as if burned. Silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. Hours passed. The storm did not ease. Eliza eventually spoke again, quieter now. Why do you live out here alone? The giant stared into the fire. Memories rose uninvited. Blood in the snow. Shouting. Betrayal. A woman's scream that still echoed in his dreams. Because people ruin things, he said simply. She nodded. They do. Something shifted then. A small crack in the wall he had built around himself for years. That night, the children slept curled like kittens near the fire. Eliza sat awake, watching the giant from across the cabin. He repaired the wagon wheel with practiced skill, his movements precise and patient. This was not a savage. This was a man who knew how to build, how to endure. And the giant, in turn, found his eyes drawn to her more than once. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in a quiet, weather-worn way, but because she was still standing after everything had tried to break her. When dawn finally came, pale and cold, the storm had passed. The mountain stood silent once more, blanketed in white. Eliza rose, determination replacing fear. We should leave while the trail is passable. The giant shook his head. Wolves will be out. And men. Men, she echoed. Worse than wolves, he said. She hesitated, then whispered the question that had been forming since the night before. Will you come with us? He laughed, a low sound without humor. I don't belong among people. She met his gaze, steady and brave. Then let us belong here. At least until we're strong again. The mountain man looked at the children. At the woman who had walked into his exile and called him family without knowing his name. For the first time in years, the mountain did not feel like a prison. It felt like a beginning. Ending line, the storm had passed, but the real battle for their hearts was only just beginning. The weight of shelter. Morning light crept through the small window like a cautious guest, pale and fragile against the endless white outside. The mountain stood quiet, but not peaceful. Silence here was never peace. It was a test, a warning that anything alive had to earn its place with effort and pain. The giant mountain man rose before the fire died completely. Habit pulled him from sleep long before comfort ever could. For years, waking had meant checking traps, reinforcing walls, counting supplies, making sure the mountain had not decided to take him in the night. This morning, he checked something else first. The children. They were still asleep, curled together beneath thick blankets, cheeks flushed now with warmth instead of fever. Eliza lay nearby, sitting upright with her back against the wall, exhaustion finally having claimed her sometime before dawn. Her face looked softer in sleep, younger somehow, though worry had etched lines around her eyes that no rest could erase. He studied them longer than he meant to. He had told her he would not leave his family. The words echoed in his head like something spoken by another man. He had not planned to say them. They had come from a place deeper than caution, deeper than fear. A place he had buried. He turned away before the thought could grow dangerous and stepped outside. The cold bit immediately, sharp and honest. His breath rose in thick clouds as he scanned the tree line. Fresh tracks. Wolves, like he had said. And something else. Boot prints, faint but unmistakable. Men. He cursed under his breath. By the time Eliza woke, he had already dragged branches across the trail, erased tracks, and set a warning snare near the eastern ridge. Survival was routine. Protecting others was not. She stirred as he poured water into a pot. "You're up early." "Always," he said. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stood, moving stiffly. "The children?" "Safe. For now." She hesitated. "You said men would be worse than wolves." He met her eyes. "They are." She did not press him. Instead, she knelt to help prepare food, though her hands were clumsy from cold and fatigue. He watched her struggle silently for a moment before stepping in, adjusting her grip without touching her skin. "Like this," he said. Their hands brushed anyway. This time, neither pulled away. Breakfast was simple. Dried meat, coarse bread, weak tea. The children ate like they had not known hunger was optional until this moment. Eliza watched them with a mixture of relief and shame, the kind all mothers carried when survival became a daily negotiation. "How long can we stay?" she asked quietly. He leaned against the table, massive arms crossed. "As long as needed." Her eyes flickered with something dangerous. "Hope." "You don't know what you're offering," she said. He almost smiled. "I know exactly." Later that day, the mountain tested them. A gunshot echoed from the lower slope, sharp and deliberate. The children screamed. Eliza froze. The giant moved instantly. "Stay here," he ordered, already reaching for his rifle. "No," she said, grabbing his sleeve. "Please." His jaw tightened. "If I don't go, they'll come here." Fear warred with trust in her eyes. She released him. He disappeared into the trees like a shadow given weight. The men were not strangers. Bounty hunters, by the look of them. 3 of them, armed and careless, riding horses too loud for a mountain that punished arrogance. They were searching for someone. Someone big. Someone rumored to live alone. "They say you're worth a price," one of them sneered when they finally saw him step into the open. "Alive or dead?" He did not raise his rifle. "Turn back," he said. They laughed. The fight was brutal and fast. The mountain had taught him efficiency, not mercy. When it was over, 2 men lay unconscious, one bleeding badly but breathing. He did not kill them. He dragged them to the edge of the trail and left them with enough supplies to crawl back to civilization and tell a better story. When he returned, Eliza was standing in the doorway, pale but unbroken. "Are they gone?" she asked. "Yes." She studied his face, searching for something darker. She found only exhaustion. "You protected us," she said. "That's what family does." The word settled between them, heavy and real. That night, Eliza told him the rest of her story. About the marriage arranged out of necessity, not love. About learning affection slowly, only to lose it cruelly. About choosing the trail west because staying meant starvation or worse. He listened without interruption. When she finished, he spoke for the first time of his own past. "Not all of it. Just enough. I failed someone once," he said. "Promised safety. Broke that promise." She reached out before fear could stop her, placing her hand over his. "You kept ours." The fire crackled softly, the mountain holding its breath. Ending line: outside, danger still prowled the wilderness, but inside the cabin, something stronger than fear was beginning to take root. Blood on the snow. The mountain never forgot. Even after the bounty hunters were gone and the trail lay silent again, the giant mountain man felt it in his bones, the way animals went quiet too suddenly, the way the wind shifted as if carrying news. Danger did not always announce itself with gunfire. Sometimes it crept, patient and resentful. Eliza sensed it as well. She woke before dawn, heart pounding for no clear reason, the children still asleep beside her. The fire had burned low, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. Across the room, the giant sat awake, sharpening his knife with slow, deliberate strokes. "You feel it too," she said softly. He nodded. "The mountain is restless." She pulled her shawl tighter. "Is it because of them?" "Partly," he paused, then added, "partly because I stayed." The words were not accusation. They were truth. For days, they lived in a careful rhythm. He hunted farther from the cabin to draw attention away. She learned the rules of the mountain, how to listen, how to ration, how to move without leaving panic behind. The children followed him like small shadows, wide-eyed and curious, slowly forgetting what it felt like to be afraid all the time. And the giant changed. He caught himself laughing once when the youngest child tried to mimic his stride and nearly fell face-first into the snow. The sound startled him more than any gunshot ever had. Eliza looked up at him then, surprise warming into something gentler. Nights grew longer. The fire drew them closer. Their conversations deepened, drifting from survival to memory, from memory to unspoken longing. He did not touch her. She noticed. Respect, she realized, could be more intimate than desire. Then the past came climbing the mountain. It happened at dusk, when the sky turned the color of bruised peaches and the air smelled like iron. A single shot rang out, followed by shouting. This time, it was closer. Too close. The giant grabbed his rifle. "Take the children to the back room. Do not come out." "It's them again," she whispered. "No," he said grimly. "This is worse." He stepped outside and found a figure staggering up the trail, blood staining the snow in a broken line. A man collapsed at his feet, breath rattling, eyes wild with terror. "They're coming," the stranger gasped. "The ones you ran off, they brought friends. Sheriff too. Says you're a murderer." The giant closed his eyes briefly. The mountain had finally collected its debt. By the time the posse arrived, Eliza was standing in the doorway, rifle in hand, children hidden behind her. Her hands shook, but she did not lower the weapon. The sheriff rode forward, voice sharp and official. "Step aside, ma'am. That man is wanted." The giant stepped beside her, his presence massive and immovable. "For what?" "For killing men." "I didn't kill them." "Doesn't matter," the sheriff said. "Territory law says you come with us." Eliza's voice broke the standoff. "He saved my children. He saved me." The sheriff's gaze flicked to her. "Then you're mistaken." The mountain wind rose, carrying snow into their faces. The giant lowered his rifle deliberately and raised his hands. "I'll go," he said. "No," Eliza cried, turning to him. "You said you wouldn't leave your family." His jaw clenched. "This is how I keep that promise." As they bound his hands, something inside Eliza snapped. She stepped forward, eyes blazing. "If you take him, you take us too." The posse laughed. Then the shots came. Chaos exploded. Horses reared. Men shouted. The giant broke free with terrifying force, knocking two men aside as bullets tore through the snow. Eliza fired, not to kill, but to distract, to protect. When it was over, the sheriff lay wounded, the others scattered or unconscious. Blood soaked the ground, dark against the white. Eliza collapsed into the giant's arms, shaking violently. "We can't stay," she whispered. "They'll never stop." He held her, his chin resting against her hair, something fierce and protective awakening fully at last. "Then we move," he said. "Together." The mountain watched them go, silent and unforgiving, as they packed what little they could carry and vanished into the trees before dawn. Ending line: the snow remembered the blood, but the road ahead demanded courage, not regret. The family he chose. The lowland stretched wide and unforgiving, a sea of grass and dust that offered no hiding places and no mercy. The mountains faded behind them, blue and distant, like a life the giant mountain man had already outgrown. Every step away felt like tearing roots from stone, but he did not look back. Eliza walked beside him, the children bundled close, their small hands gripping hers as if she were the anchor holding them all together. They traveled mostly at dawn and dusk, avoiding roads, skirting settlements. The world beyond the mountain was louder, crueler, and far more crowded with judgment. Word traveled faster than they did. By the time they reached the edge of a frontier town, whispers had already shaped the giant into something monstrous. Men watched him with narrowed eyes. Women pulled children closer. Hands hovered near holsters. Eliza felt it immediately, the weight of fear pressing down on them like another storm. They needed supplies. Food. Medicine. A place to disappear long enough to breathe. Inside the general store, silence fell. The shopkeeper swallowed hard. "We don't want trouble." The giant spoke calmly. "Neither do we." It was Eliza who stepped forward then, spine straight, voice steady. "We will pay. We will not steal. We will leave before nightfall." Her dignity unsettled them more than his size ever could. They were allowed to buy what they needed, but not without insults murmured behind their backs. When they turned to leave, a man blocked the door. Rough clothes. Cold eyes. A badge pinned crookedly to his chest. "You," he said, pointing at the giant. "You're wanted." Eliza felt the world tilt. Before fear could claim her, the giant placed a hand on her shoulder, firm, grounding. "I am done running," he said quietly. He faced the man. "You want me, you answer to me first." What followed was not a fight, but a reckoning. Witnesses spoke. The shopkeeper spoke. Eliza spoke, her voice unwavering as she told the truth, not a legend, not a rumor, but a story of survival, protection, and choice. The badge meant little when enough truth gathered around it. By nightfall, the man with the badge left empty-handed, humiliated and alone. They did not stay in the town. Instead, they followed a river south, building a new life where the land was harsh but honest. The giant raised walls again, but this time they were not meant to keep the world out, they were meant to keep a family safe. Eliza learned the land. The children learned laughter. And the giant learned something far more difficult than survival. He learned belonging. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, he stood beside Eliza, watching the children play. "I never asked you to stay," she said softly. He turned to her, eyes steady. "You didn't have to." Their hands found each other naturally, no fear left between them. Love did not arrive like lightning. It arrived like dawn, slow, inevitable, and impossible to deny. Months passed. Seasons turned. One day, standing beneath an open sky, he spoke the words that sealed what the mountain had begun. "Stay with me." Not out of need. Out of choice. Eliza smiled through tears. "I already have." The giant mountain man was no longer a shadow or a rumor. He was a husband. A father. A man who had chosen love over exile. Ending line: the mountain had forged his strength, but it was love that finally taught him who he was.